CSS examination is a difficult examination, but if you understand the rules of this game, if you familiarize yourself with the tricks of this game, it will no longer remain a hard nut to be cracked by you. It would seem quite simple to you after you have actually learned how to handle different papers according to the right methodologies, and you put in the right potential and do the right practice to acquire those skills which would be utilized there to crack this difficult question of CS examination. You have to build your skills. Essay writing is basically the name of a skill in which you have to show your skill of writing. You have to first of all understand different kinds of essays. You have to understand the basic concept of essay, different aspects of essay writing. As I told you in yesterday's lecture, that there are three main aspects of essay writing, or a letter writing, or a piece of poetry, or a story. There are three main aspects. One is the thought contents, the ideas, the knowledge that you are sharing with your readers. The second, the language in which you are sharing that idea. If your language is not correct, then definitely in such examinations which are titled as competitive examination, your chances of getting success would be lower than other candidates. Why? Because you are competing. What makes this examination most difficult is this concept that you are not considered in absolute terms. Rather, your work is being compared with all other candidates. These days, in some of the previous years, we have seen that some 20,000 candidates or 15,000 candidates, and if we make an average, we can simply say some 10,000 to 12,000 candidates are appearing in CS examinations now. Almost for last 45 years, the government of Pakistan is conducting this examination right after the partition of Pakistan in 1971. But in none of these years, the Federal Public Service Commission was convinced to pass above 1,000 candidates. Every year, the number of candidates who get through this examination is much below 800, 600. It's very rare that some 500 plus candidates would pass this examination in 1 year. Sometimes this miracle has taken place, but it's rare. It's very rare. And you want to make your luck through this examination. My purpose of this talk is not to scare you away from this examination, but I am just putting in my effort to awaken you. I am just trying to make you understand that you have to take this topic and this examination very seriously. You have not to take it lightly. And if you take it seriously, and if you relax only after reaching your destination, you will definitely become a successful person. We cannot afford any slackness or any carelessness in these few coming months while we are in the process of preparing for CS examination. Three main aspects of essay writing: thought, content, and definitely who will be able to impress the audience or the readers or the examiners with their thought contents. If that person is not in the habit of reading newspapers, in the habit of reading extra books, in the habit of improving their general knowledge, and the person is not working on the improvement of his or her mental caliber, can you deny this fact that in order to compete with other candidates and to write an excellent essay, one of the main aspects would be good knowledge that you would be sharing through your essay? And without getting good knowledge, without improving your mental caliber, without being smart in your thinking, without learning articles from newspapers? Will it be just a miracle that you will just get up one day from your bed and you will be able to create excellent essays so far as the thought content is concerned? No, I think that it is not going to happen like a miracle. You have to increase your knowledge bit by bit, piece by piece, gathering those pieces from different sources which are available in your environment and in your world. Books are there, newspapers are there, TV programs are there, current affairs programs are there. There are so many sources, classrooms are there, teachers are there. So you have to build up on your general knowledge, and you have to specifically improve your knowledge in certain other areas of academics, of uh, issues. We can give you a list of those topics which you have to prepare in the first uh, reference. The second aspect of your essay is your knowledge, so your language. So you have to improve your language skills. When you write your essay, when you create your paragraphs, your reader, which is your examiner as well, must be quite happy with your expression. You're not going to disappoint your reader in this regard as well. Let me tell you one thing, that your examiner, your reader would be able to make an estimate of your thought when he will go through the whole essay from top to bottom. Nobody can make an estimation of a thought by reading only one first paragraph. But everybody would be in a very good position to make assessment of your language by reading the first paragraph. So the very first thing that would come into the notice of your examiner would not be your actual whole thought of the essay. It would be your expression. I hope it makes sense. I would be able to appreciate the entire thought by reading the entire essay. But I would be able to make an assessment of your expression by reading only first paragraph or any one paragraph, maybe from the middle of your essay, maybe from the end of your essay. So this explains the importance of learning language. You must write such smart sentences and such an expression that is always a source of joy for your reader. Essay is a genre of literature. And let me tell you that one of the greatest purposes of literature is that it gives enjoyment when somebody reads it. And we cannot minimize this aspect in case of essay writing as well. You have to create this charisma of language in your essay. You have to impress your readers in essay writing through your language. I told you that your essay, the very first thing that would be evaluated in case of your essay would be your expression, your language. It should be immaculate, particularly in the first half of your essay. You can be given some concession to commit some of the mistakes in the later half of your essay, but to be very much in position of getting through this examination, it would be very much necessary for you that you use 4 eyes and 2 brains to keep your language correct in the first half of your essay. And then the third aspect of essay writing is its structure. Essay has a proper structure. And every different type of essay has a specific different structure. You cannot use the same structure in every type of essay. Let us talk about one type of essay that I usually call a problem essay. Now you are able to understand what a problem essay can be, in which you are actually explaining some problem, like the energy crisis in Pakistan. It is definitely a problem essay. Like global warming, every class 8 student understand that when the words global warming are combined to make a topic for essay, this is definitely name of a problem. So definitely you will be explaining this essay in the form of a problem. Talk about any other essay. Climatic change. or poverty. That would be a problem essay. Now, in case of a problem essay, there are always three main parts of such an essay in the main body. I'm not talking about the introductory part of the essay. I'm not talking about the conclusive part of the essay. I'm talking about the main body of the essay. And that main body of the essay will be divided into three parts. Whenever you are dealing with a problem, you would definitely discuss in detail the causes of it. Another very important segment of that essay would be effects of that problem. And the third section of that essay would be about the solutions or remedies or suggestions to handle that problem. Now, I hope all of you agree that any problem essay would be dealt this way. But let me over here draw your attention to another kind of essay writing. Let's say there is an essay that actually appeared in CS examination. That was pleasure of reading. Pleasures of reading. Or another essay like foreign direct investment in Pakistan. It appeared in CS examination. Or another essay like the status of women in Islam. Now, when we are talking about the status of women in Islam, or we are talking about pleasures of reading, definitely this is not a problem essay. Categorically, it is not a problem essay. So can you apply the same structure? Is pleasures of reading a problem? Can we discuss causes of this problem? This is not a problem. So we cannot apply the structure of a problem essay to write a non-problem essay. Definitely for this type of essay, you have to learn a different structure. And you have to use that structure to write this essay, as you have to use a particular structure in the case of writing an informal letter. I do not know how many of you are familiar with one type of poem that is called sonnet in English language. I know that sonnet is also the name of a chocolate, which is very common. But actually the sonnet is a poem. It has a very specific, well-defined structure. There are two types of sonnets in the world. Almost for the last 400 years, when sonnet was first introduced in Italy by the poet Petrarch, or maybe it was introduced by some other poet, but it was popularized by Petrarch. Because of which we have two models of sonnet in the current world. One of them is called Italian model or Petrarchan model. And the second one is called English model or Shakespearean model. But let me tell you over here that both of these models have some slight internal differences. I'm talking about the structure. I'm using the example of sonnet to give you the idea of what structure means in case of an essay. Both of these models have many things in common, which means that they would have fixed structure in these regards, in these respects. Like every sonnet would have 14 lines, whether Shakespearean or Petrarchan, English sonnet or Italian sonnet. Every sonnet will have 14 lines. Any poem having 15 lines, 16 lines, 13 lines, 9 lines, 10 lines, 21 lines, 47 lines can be called anything but a sonnet. It would not be a sonnet. If it is to be called a sonnet, it must have 14 lines. And then those 14 lines will be divided into two parts. One part of 8 lines in both cases, whether Shakespearean sonnet or Petrarchan sonnet. It will have one part called octet, comprising 8 lines. The second part called sestet, comprising 6 lines. Then the first part would also have a particular rhyme scheme. You understand what is a rhyme scheme? Rhyming words. It would be A, B, B, A, B, B, A, 8 lines. Like if the first line will have last word as train, A, then the second line will have a different time scheme, like tail. Third line will also have the similar rhyme scheme, like male. And the fourth line will have a matching word in rhyme with the first word, last word of the first line, like brain. If the first line has the last word as train, so there will be specific structure of his sonnet. If the student who is supposed to handle sonnet in his examination is not familiar with these basic standards of sonnet, then definitely whatever he will create in his essay, in his examination, in the name of sonnet, may not be appreciated. So the third very important aspect of your essay is its structure. And now, as I have told you, that there are different types of essays. Let's share some slides with you about those different types of essays. For example, this one. One of the types is called a narrative essay, as I discussed yesterday. Another one is called descriptive essay. Another well-known type of essay writing is called expository essay. And another kind of essay writing is called argumentative essay. Another type of essay writing is discursive essay or discussion type essay or a debate essay, discursive essay. Then there is another well-known kind of essay writing that is called biographical essay. Then there can be another kind of essay writing that is well known to be autobiographical essay. And then there is a literary or philosophical essay. Now, let me tell you that generally every essay is philosophical or some essays are scientific. But here I'm using the word literary essay for a particular kind of essay in which the way of discussing things is very much literary. Like romanticism is there. Unrealistic things can be discussed. That is a literary essay, like poetry, romantic poetry. I'm not talking about the structure of the poetry. I'm talking about the theme of the poetry, just to make you understand what I mean by a literary essay. Like we deal with things in poetry. I told you yesterday that if we are trying to understand this aspect of essay writing as to what type of tools we have to apply and what type of structure we have to give to our essay, then first let us take the example of a narrative essay. I told you yesterday that if you are supposed to create a narrative essay, then you are actually creating a story. In story, I told you yesterday that the most important aspect of story writing would be its plot. An extensive story will have a very elaborate, extensive plot. And how can plot be defined? It can be defined as order of events. Order of events. Before creating a story, the writer actually creates its plot. Then I have told you what a plot can be. Plot can be an order of events because story is always based on events. And an extensive story will have many events, not 1, 2, 3. And then definitely the writer has to first decide as to which event will occur first and which event will occur as a result of the first event. And there will maybe a long change of cause and effect. So first of all, plot is to be understood. Then another important thing that you have to manage in case of a story is action. I told you yesterday. I will not dwell on it today. I will proceed further, inshallah. But because I have also to take care of some of the candidates who were not present in yesterday's lecture, so I'm repeating a few concepts that I discussed yesterday. Then another important aspect of a narrative essay or story writing is character. How can you write a story without mentioning characters? Even you have Aesop's fables, some very short stories for the kids. You use characters like Birds are used as characters. Animals are used as characters. There was a crow, there was a fox, there was a lion, there was a mouse, there was a lamb, there was a wolf. You use characters. And if my job were to teach you narrative writing, definitely I would give you 2 to 3 lectures on characterization. But right now, that's not my job because narrative essays do not appear in CS examination. Then there is conflict. You cannot build a story without mentioning a conflict. There is always clash between two groups of characters, or maybe two characters at least. That clash actually gives birth to the story. If there is no clash, how can you create a story? All life was happy, happy, money was no problem. How can you build a story? Then there is climax, when all the action reaches at its apex, at its zenith. Then there is anticlimax. A stage comes when the writer starts creating anticlimax. And then there is suspense, one very important element that can be scattered here and there, that always keeps the reader in touch with the book that is containing that story or this picture or the movie. The reader will remain glued to the screen of the cinema because of this element of suspense. If this element is missing, your story may not be well appreciated. Then there is resolution of the conflict. Ultimately, conflict is resolved. And then there is end of the story. These are some of the very basic elements of story writing or narrative essay. And if, for example, we are talking about descriptive essay, sometimes we describe some material thing. Like I gave you examples yesterday that we have got this experience in our school life of writing essays on the cow or the horse or my favorite fruit in very initial classes. Then our school tuck shop, sometimes we wrote an essay on my house, my school, my city, my country. We describe some material thing. And definitely in this case, we are not going to apply all these things which we have learned in the previous example of narrative writing. We are not using plot, action, character, conflict, climax, anticlimax, suspense, resolution, and in case of descriptive writing, particularly of this nature in which we are going to describe something, no plot is there, no climax is there, no anticlimax is there, no substantial characters are there. We are just giving details of the size of that thing, the color of that thing, the texture of that thing, or certain other details about the physical qualities of that thing, usually. And sometimes instead of describing some material thing, we describe some intangible thing. Like, guess what? Like love. There was an essay in CS examination that was longing for love. You're talking about something intangible, or greed, or something like that. Sometimes we describe certain things which are intangible, which are abstract. And sometimes at some advanced levels, we have a combination of both. Like when we are going to describe some system, or we are going to describe some, say, process or some phenomenon, like poverty in Pakistan would be a phenomenon, like democracy in Pakistan would be a system of government, like global warming or climatic change would be a process or a phenomenon. At this advanced level of CSS examination, definitely such descriptive essays like describing some material thing or describing some intangible thing, they usually do not appear. But the third kind, which is a combination in which you describe some system or process or phenomena, they do appear in CS examination. And technically, we call them expository essays. The word expository comes from exposition. Expose something, you expose something. You give details about that thing. So definitely, in order to write on such topics, which is not a problem essay, like pleasures of reading or foreign direct investment in Pakistan, you can supply the right details, impressive details, and get attention of your examiner. If the details that you supply are correct, first of all, and how can they be correct? If you have not learned them from relevant, correct, reliable sources. In order to write on such topics, you depend on right content, right material, right sources, and then you memorize. Definitely in this case, you memorize those pieces of information, and then you use them to make a very large essay of this level. Then there is another kind of essay that is called argumentative essay. In an argumentative essay, you simply make an argument. Now you have to understand what an argument is. You have a particular point of view before you. It can be your own point of view, or it can be somebody else's point of view. You justify that point of view, or you negate that point of view. If you have pre-decided that you would justify your point of view or given point of view, then actually you are creating an argument. Similarly, in order to negate somebody's point of view, you again use the method of argumentation. So when you justify some point of view, maybe when you are negating some point of view, it means that you are justifying its opposite. So I would only use the words when you are justifying some point of view, then you are actually creating an argument. Now you have to understand what an argument is. It is properly defined in the books of philosophy. It's a technical terminology. What an argument? It has technical parts. It has great technicalities inside it. In CS examination, if you make an analysis of last 20 years papers, you will see that almost 60% of the topics belong to this category of essay writing, that is argumentative essay. And apart from argumentative essay, there is another kind of essay writing that is called discursive essay. They also appear in CS examination. A discursive essay is an essay in which you are at the same time negating one side of the argument and supporting another side of the argument. Let me tell you an internal difference between an argumentative essay or a discursive essay. In argumentative essay, you go in one direction, either in the same direction in which there is an argument or in the opposite direction. You do one thing, but in case of a discursive or discussion type essay or debate essay, you actually get into a debate. In our common life, sometimes in our Punjabi language and Urdu language, we use the word argument. We are talking to in our company, and we say, okay, what is your argument, Asad? There is some dispute going on in our company and our friends. And sometimes we want to become a mediator in that discussion or in that conflict. We say, okay, Aisha, what is your argument? And then Aisha says, my argument is this. And then I say, okay, what is your argument, Asad? And Asad said, my argument is this. Now look at these words. I hope you all are familiar with this way of talking. What is your argument? What is his argument? What is my argument? We use the word my, his, your. But when it is discussion, we never use this terminology. We say, what is your discussion? We never say this thing. We never say this. What is your discussion, Aisha? What is your, we say, what is your argument? But do not say, what is your discussion? So when it is discussion, it is not owned. When it is argument, it is owned. It would be either your argument or it would be somebody else's argument. You would either justify your argument or you would negate somebody else's argument. But in case of discussion, you have actually to sum up the discussion. That somebody said this thing, another person said this thing, and third person said this thing. And this is the conclusion of the entire discussion. So in discursive essay or a discussion type essay or a debate essay or a discursive essay, you have actually to bring forth all the aspects of a particular issue that is given to you in the form of a topic. And definitely the structure of the essay that you can use for the sake of an argumentative essay will not be applicable to a discussion type essay. So you have to take care of all these aspects. Only then you will be in a good position to write your own essays. So out of all these different kinds of essays, literary essays do not appear in CS examination. Autobiographical essays, when you are writing about your own life, autobiography, definitely such an easy topic cannot appear in CS examination, like my aim in life. Definitely whatever aim you have in your life, who can evaluate it and who can say that, okay, this aim is not good, that aim is good, I'm not giving good marks to this candidate because his aim is not very pleasing, and definitely this does not occur. So autobiographical essays or essays in which you write on some other personality, like an essay on Qaid Azam or an essay on Allama Iqbal, such essays do not appear in CS examination. So what is the most important thing for you to understand today is the most important topics belong to three different types: expository essays and argumentative essays and debate essays or discursive essays or discussion type essays. These are the three main categories which do appear in CS examination. And my estimate tells me that if we make an analysis of last 10 years papers or 20 years papers, why I say 20 years papers? Not because you will find different things in previous 20 years papers. No, I use the word 20 years only because its data is very easily available on the internet. So I have no fears that if you make analysis of the 40 years papers, you will drive different conclusions. I use the word 20 years and I make a advice to you to make an analysis of 20 years only because its data is very easily available on the internet. So what I say is that if you make an analysis of last 20 years essay papers, you will come to understand that some 60% of the topics belong to this category of essays, which is named as argumentative essays. Some 20% topics belong to this category of expository essays, and some 20% topics belong to this category of discursive or discursive essays. So that's the end of my talk for today. If you want to ask any questions, please feel yourself completely free to ask that question now.
Excuse me, sir. ये जो इस टाइप के टॉपिक्स हैं, when life throws you lemon, make lemonade, या woman, thy name is frailty, ये किस कैटेगरी को belong करते हैं?
Argumentative essays.
All right.
Any other question?